Hi, Denver Startup Week. I'm Ben Data, CEO of Food Maven and co-chair of Denver Startup Week, the largest free entrepreneurial event in the world, and it's only possible thanks to the support of our sponsors. We have nearly 40 sponsor companies who contribute to make DSW possible. Let's show our love for these companies today and all week long. Thanks to our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Xero. Our track sponsors who have made all the great content you're hearing today possible: Battery 621 in the Public Works, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline event sponsors are bringing you inspiration from around the country. Thank you to Wix, Kenzen, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. Now let's get to it.
Quizlet is a global learning platform that provides engaging study tools to help people practice and master whatever they're learning. Every month, over 50 million people use Quizlet to study any subject imaginable, for school, work, or as part of their personal interests.
Quizlet is super efficient, and I often, walk to class with it on my phone or even just before I go to sleep.
Combining cognitive science and machine learning, Quizlet guides students through adaptive study activities to confidently reach their learning goals. Quizlet has over 200 employees across 3 offices in San Francisco, Denver, and London.
Being at the Denver Quizlet office for the last year has been pretty incredible. Seeing the office grow while maintaining its, core connections to our values. It's been an incredible experience to be a part of, seeing how humble, candid, and open everyone has been, and being part of a mission-driven company in a time of uncertainty has been incredibly rewarding. So I look forward to, what the future brings, because the last year has been a wonderful experience. Thank you, Quizlet.
Hey everyone, my name's Adam Bauman and I'm part of the Quizlet team here in Denver. I'm proud to work for a company that's goal is to help every single person on this earth become a better lifelong learner. One of my favorite things about working at Quizlet is how much we follow our company values. There's always learning opportunities. We encourage everybody to teach themselves something new, as well as help each other learn. Whether it's from art classes or lunch and learn talks on latest technologies, there's always something new to find and help yourself grow. And I really feel like that's one of the best things that any company can offer is growth and opportunity.
Hi, everyone. This is Connor Swanson. I'm noticing that our participants number hasn't grown yet. So I'm pinging our host to make sure we've let people into this webinar. So let's give it 1 second here to see if I can get that corrected, and then we'll get going.
Thank you, Connor.
Just 1 minute. It's like they're looking into it.
Yeah, my coworker said it's just a YouTube video right now, or a live YouTube.
Okay. Looks like that number is starting to go up.
Hey everyone, people are coming in now. Everyone's coming in right now.
Great. Hi, everyone. We're going to give this just a minute to let folks.
Thank you for
come
coming
in.
to Denver Startup Week. We're going to let everyone get into the room real quick and then we'll get started.
Hi, Denver Startup Week. I'm Ben Data, CEO of Food Maven and co-chair of Denver Startup Week, the largest free entrepreneurial event in the world. And it's only possible thanks to the support of our sponsors. We have nearly 40 sponsor companies who contribute to make DSW possible. Let's show our love for these companies today and all week long. Thanks to our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Zero. Our track sponsors who have made all the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 in the Public Works, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline event sponsors are bringing you inspiration from around the country. Thank you to Wix, Kenzen, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. Now let's get to it.
Quizlet is a global learning platform that provides engaging study tools to help people practice and master whatever they're learning. Every month, over 50 million people use Quizlet to study any subject imaginable, for school, work, or as part of their personal interests.
Quizlet is super efficient, and I often, walk to class with it on my phone or even just before I go to sleep.
Combining cognitive science and machine learning, Quizlet guides students through adaptive study activities to confidently reach their learning goals. Quizlet has over 200 employees across 3 offices in San Francisco, Denver, and London.
Being at the Denver Quizlet office for the last year has been pretty incredible. Seeing the office grow while maintaining its core connections to our values. It's been an incredible experience to be a part of, seeing how humble, candid, and open everyone has been, and being part of a mission-driven company in a time of uncertainty has been incredibly rewarding. So I look forward to what the future brings, because the last year has been a wonderful experience. Thank you, Quizlet.
Hey everyone, my name's Adam Bauman and I'm part of the Quizlet team here in Denver. I'm proud to work for a company that's goal is to help every single person on this earth become a better lifelong learner. One of my favorite things about working at Quizlet is how much we follow our company values. There's always learning opportunities. We encourage everybody to teach themselves something new, as well as help each other learn. Whether it's from art classes or lunch and learn talks on latest technologies, there's always something new to find and help yourself grow. And I really feel like that's one of the best things that any company can offer is growth and opportunity.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Connor Swanson, the Developer Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for our first ever virtual Denver Startup Week. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we are more powerful when we come together as a community to share ideas that help make each other better. And here we are virtually showing the world what Denver is made of. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, and the combination of those identities. There's something for everyone at DSW. Thank you for joining us. With that, I want to quickly reiterate my thanks to all of our sponsors for Denver Startup Week, and specifically Quizlet, our developer track sponsor, for helping make this week possible. I'd now like to introduce you to Dave, Allison, Ingrid, Evan, and Scott, who will be leading this panel session.
Thank you, Connor. Thank you all for being here, and happy Denver Startup Week. In particular, thanks to Connor Swanson and Allison for making this panel a reality. Thanks again to Quizlet for the sponsorship, and thanks to the core Denver Startup Week organizing team. My name is Dave Mayer. I'll be your moderator today. This is my 7th year involved with Denver Startup Week in some capacity or another. Honored to be here to help bring this important panel to light. I'm the CEO and founder of Technical Integrity. We're a boutique placement firm focused on inclusive executive and engineering teams in Colorado and around the country. In particular, I would love for our esteemed panelists to give some brief self-intros. So Ingrid, maybe you can go first, and then Evan and then Scott, please.
Great, thanks, Dave. Yeah, my name is Ingrid Alonji. My career background is in software engineering, and I started Quizlet, a custom app development firm in downtown Boulder in 2010. I was acquired by Cognizant in 2016. I was chair of the board of Turing, which is a 7-month code school focused on diversity in computer programming, starting in 2014, but I left Cognizant this spring, and now I'm a GP at Stage Fund, and I stepped down from the Turing board to become more hands-on as director of Turing Plus, which is a grant-funded postgraduate fellowship to get our grads valuable work experience during COVID hiring slowdowns.
And hi, my name is Evan Hung. I'm currently a senior engineering manager at Uplight. Previously, I was the co-founder and COO of Nikola Power. We were a clean tech company based in Denver and a graduate of the Techstars Sustainability Accelerator in 2018.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Scott Bowman. I'm currently senior career coach with Flatiron School. I also co-founded a meetup group and Slack community called Bootcampers Collective. I've been working with various boot camps over the last 4 years, including Refactor and DeVry Bootcamp, which are now defunct. And in this time, I've really seen a wide variety of skill sets throughout the industry through my coaching, through talking with employers, and also really, advising on the growth of a lot of these programs over the years. So thank you.
Thank you. And Allison, you want to say hello briefly? Allison Daly from Recruiting Innovation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Daly, CEO and founder of Recruiting Innovation, an online technical training platform for recruiters. And innovating the whole recruiting process is required for us to really drive diversity in the tech industry. And so this topic is right on time and right on point. I'll be coming in later in the session to help facilitate Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Allison. So as you all know, the name of this panel is how to improve diversity of your dev team, how to hire, grow, leverage bootcamp grads. It's not that hard, we promise. So let's start at the beginning. Scott, maybe you can start us off. Why is this problem important to tackle, and why is it important to tackle now?
Absolutely. I feel specifically when it comes to D&I, diversity and inclusion kind of practices that are more proactive within this industry, I see that they are getting, very quality candidates through intentionally diversifying their workforces. At the same time, we all know that it's hard to find that perfect candidate out there. And so it's requiring a lot of employers to get very creative in terms of their talent pools, who they're talking to, et cetera. And they're finding a huge benefit to talking to bootcamp grads, people that may be changing careers and bringing in a lot of additional skill sets to help sustain the business. So I definitely see this huge area of opportunity for companies to leverage boot camps as a way to diversify their teams.
Evan, Ingrid, would you like to weigh in?
Sure. I think that traditionally the tech industry has not been incredibly diverse. I think that there's oftentimes a lot of conversation around it being important, and then folks not really knowing how to do it. And what ends up happening is the conversation continues, but actually put into practice, we end up seeing a lot of teams of people that look like ourselves. And what I think is incredible about boot camps is it gives us this really practical place where we can go to, as Scott mentioned, get a ton of different varied experiences and from people who are incredibly qualified to do the work that we need done. So it's a really great opportunity for us to actually put our money where our mouths are and not talk about it and actually do something about it.
Yeah, and I'll add, even though I'm a woman in engineering and I started an engineering consulting company, it actually didn't magically happen that I had a diverse engineering team. I had to actually do work to get there, both from the interviewing side and the candidate pool side. And so I really did rely on Bootcamp Graduates to diversify my team. And I just made that commitment to kind of take on these folks and grow them into their careers. Some of them went on and grew into great managers. Some are still individual contributors. But what I really liked, especially for my business was consulting. So we interacted with clients all the time and there was a lot of collaboration, is that these folks had a lot of skills that they brought with them from their other careers. So a lot of them are career changers and they have such an interesting set of backgrounds and they brought a lot to the table. And they were just easier to kind of put in front of clients, even if they were new. So I really felt I was successfully able to diversify my team overall. I think towards the end of Quick Left, half of our leadership was women and a third of our engineering team was women. So it was really successful for me to do that.
So let's talk about some of the hesitations that organizations typically have around hiring bootcamp graduates, and how to overcome some of those hesitations, and how are each of you handling those hesitations? Ingrid, why don't go ahead and start with you?
Yeah, so having been kind of on both sides, I said I was chair of the board of Turing since 2014, but I started hiring graduates out of G School. So in fact, my co-founder at Quick Left still has one of the people from the first class working with him at Credit Karma, which is really cool. And so I've been on the employer side, and then I've also now, especially while I was on the Turing board and now with Turing Plus, been on the recruiting side, the recruiting of companies. And I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is there's this concern that it's going to be too much hand-holding and it's going to take too much time to onboard these folks, and it's going to distract from the product release, or it's going to somehow delay things, or it's going to be not worth the time and effort. And the interesting pattern I've noticed there is when a company or an engineering team is disciplined with their agile process and clear on their product roadmap, these aren't really issues. Where I've seen it come in more as a problem is where you have a team that's a little unorganized, or they aren't clear on their goals. And so it's hard to give that work to a junior. And what senior engineers bring is enough experience to kind of what I call read minds, or read between the lines, where they can kind of guess what you mean and implement the right thing. And that just takes time and experience. But those teams that are really organized and disciplined, like I said, I've had a very easy time slotting in fresh graduates into my team without experiencing delays in deliveries and things like that.
Scott, what are some of the hesitations that you've had to overcome, and what have you done to do so?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it really depends on the phase of the company. Are they able to really support newer grads, and over what period of time is it going to take them to get up to speed and that kind of thing? What I know that companies are getting with a lot of our bootcamp grads is someone who is right away ready to learn, right, and implement a lot of the things that they've learned, but they've already humbled themselves, through their expectation where they plan to start. So you're getting that candidate who, again, is going to soak up that information with just a little bit of push. You're going to see them aspire to get more involved in the team and to contribute as soon as possible. And I work primarily with cybersecurity at the moment. I have worked with software engineering in the past, but I know that junior engineers on that side as well can really help take a lot of the business email compromise and analysis kind of work off their hands of the more kind of experienced team, or maybe even contributing on more of the compliance side as well. There's a lot of different ways that they can help add value early on and grow to meet those expectations in a short period of time.
Evan, you said something that I really liked during our prep, which was for organizations to slow down to speed up. What did you mean by that? And how does that impact hiring these types of grads?
Totally. So I think that a lot of times the concern is rooted in a very short-term thinking around this idea of, can folks contribute immediately? We have this huge backlog of things we have to get done. Do we really have time? And I think a lot of times it's characterized in a way that I don't like, of like hand-holding, things of that nature. Can we hire this? Like, can we actually make that happen? And I think really it's important for the organization to know, what is the North Star that we're working towards, right? What is it that we want to be as an organization? And that's more than that's diversity. That's output. That's diversity of thought. That's everything. What investments are we making today in order to actually achieve that North Star? Are we willing to slow down? Right? Are we willing to be intentional about mentorship at our organization in order for us to actually achieve a level of velocity that we, cannot achieve today, and we didn't even know was possible? I've seen situations in the organization that I'm at now where the intentionality for senior engineers to mentor junior engineers has actually yielded other sort of intangible benefits around, cross-functional, different pods explaining different problems within the technology. Just being able to have that, right? Being able to establish that, not only are we now growing an engineer who is able to contribute, right, but we are also establishing a culture of collaboration, of curiosity, of teaching for the organization. And that really can only yield positive things in the future.
Yeah, I want to add to that what Evan just said, because I completely agree that when you change the culture of the senior developers to be to slow down and take that time to mentor, it actually has a positive impact on the overall culture of the team. And I really saw a positive change when we took those steps as well, to not just look at who we were bringing in on the junior level, but who were we bringing in on the senior level, and what were their expectations? Was it to crush code, or was it to mentor and teach? And as we made that shift, the culture just became better and more collaborative. Sorry, Scott, you were going to talk too.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I think really having that expectation of who you're hiring, even at the top level, and looking for people who want to contribute to mentorship and that kind of thing too, helps make your culture more collaborative. Another thing I want to add in there too is, community internships, right? If you're skeptical of the abilities of a bootcamp grad, right, make it a part-time or an internship kind of opportunity, maybe short-term contract, right, where it's win-win they get the experience, and you get to potentially test them out, test the water, see if it's the right kind of pathway for you to take in your future recruiting. And the last point I want to make too is that there's always pair programming, right? Hackathons, sprints, all those kinds of things inside the team as well within that agile framework that are really going to help onboard someone that much quicker.
I agree. I want to add one more thing too, Scott. You had said something really great about this sort of curiosity that you noticed in these bootcamp grads. And I wanted to just emphasize that. And it's like, imagine just completely switching careers and being brave enough to go from, being an ER ambulance driver or a bartender, and then going into tech. And it's extremely intimidating, and there's tons of imposter syndrome. But if you can sort of get through that, what those kind of people bring is just that curiosity to learn. So like Scott said, anything like pair programming or ways that these graduates can get involved is going to have a positive impact. They're hungry to learn. And that's kind of what I've noticed is I never made a bad hire. It was they just came in with curiosity and optimism. And it was really, overall, I've had such great experiences with these graduates.
That's a good transition to my next question, which is around both success stories and lessons learned. I'm sure each of you have, a few things you would like to share. I think just for the audience, we'll do another sort of 15 minutes specifically on moderated discussion, and then we'll leave 15 minutes for everybody else's questions. So yeah, I think maybe even talking about lessons learned first, and then success stories, and how people can learn from all of our experience here. Scott?
Yeah, definitely. Some lessons learned, I think, through this process and helping employers, and kind of facilitating some of these hiring processes and kind of determining what ultimately is the deciding factor in that hire. I've noticed 9 times out of 10, it doesn't really come down to the technical skills. It comes down to, is this a great person to work with? Right? Is this someone, I think as Ingrid and Evan had said earlier, is this someone that can work with our customers? Is this someone who's going to ask the right questions instead of spinning their wheels over and over again? And so, helping companies, make that quality pick, like I said, ultimately comes down to the personality, their fit. Are they curious? And I think you're going to find that a lot with bootcamp grads. I think where fits haven't worked quite as well has been when they've solely focused on the technical skills for the job. A lot of that can be trained. If it's a yes/no answer in the technical interview and that rules you out, I encourage there to be more discussion on why, where you fell short, that kind of thing. So it's a learning experience in the interview process with your candidates as much as possible. But yeah, definitely having a clear understanding of even what you want out of that personality, in addition to technical skills.
I can go next. I think my biggest lesson learned is making sure that I'm setting up an environment that sort of sets people up for success. It's like you can kind of check the boxes and kind of bring in diversity, but if you're not creating an environment that they'll be successful in, or anyone can be successful in, then that's where some work has to be done. And I do tend to take more responsibility for that kind of stuff. Like if somebody comes on and it's a bad fit, then I realize, well, maybe I wasn't clear enough about kind of the expectations on my end, or things like that. Or so just looking at my policies overall, and making sure that they're really I'm setting up a really welcoming place for, not just gender, race diversity, but also thought diversity. I tend to like to push on people to hire people that they may not want to have a beer with after work. but you can still like really have a great collaboration and push people to think differently in that interviewing process. So those are kind of my lessons learned, is just to think sort of more broadly about what the person is coming into when they come work for me.
Evan, anything you want to add there?
I think most of my points Ingrid and Scott covered.
All right. So let's talk about something that's important, really critical, is how to create belonging and how to avoid tokenism. Not an easy subject, but an important one. Ingrid, you want to give it a shot to start?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is sort of an ongoing work in progress that we're working on, and even at Turing, whose student body, or our goal is to make it look like the demographics of Denver in terms of race and gender. It's still an evolution, and I think one thing is sort of making sure that everyone has access to leadership at standard working hours. I did a talk many years ago where I was like, let's make it so that people can connect, not just at happy hours after work, so the people with kids can still participate. And so thinking just in terms of general overall inclusive policies, things that in tech have maybe been socially acceptable. It's good to just kind of look at some of those things and see if really they are inclusive or exclusive. So one of the things we did a while back, instead of emphasizing happy hours, was we would do potlucks, so people could bring stuff to the office, and then we'd all have a chance to kind of interact and connect in a way that didn't exclude. But I think it's also interesting to look at sort of ways of interacting. We have this like Western oratorial way of conversing, and what in a meeting, like a debate-ish meeting, we have kind of reward those people that are confident and can speak up. And even in interviews, and people that are quiet and maybe can't advocate for themselves, we see them as not very smart. So even looking at kind of how you conduct your meetings and how you give people space to speak are things that you can do to help create an inclusive environment once your code school graduate can get there.
Yeah, thanks. And for those who are not familiar with this concept of identity, of belonging as part of a DE&I practice, it's really just the simple idea that if you hire somebody that doesn't look like you, that is Black or Latinx or fill in the blank, but they're the only one or two at your organization, and they leave after 6 months, that means they did not feel welcome, or they did not feel like they belonged. And so that's precisely what we're trying to get at, to improve that for our companies in Colorado and beyond. So Scott, and then Evan.
Yes, actually, I think Ingrid covered a ton of really great points. I think to that, having a really clear, structured onboarding program is always really going to help professionals really coming from all backgrounds, better understand the culture of your organization, better understand how they can contribute, and better understand their expectations. And I know that it's something that we all, aspire to in a lot of these organizations, but it can be challenging in an early phase company to lay that out. But to Evan's point earlier on, having a clear vision of who we are as a company, who are we? What does diversity mean within our organization, right? And defining that. I think in addition to that, having D&I committees, right? That a top-down push, but a grassroots, internal kind of peer organization to review existing policies, to potentially lay out events, to potentially get involved in hiring and workforce, intentional diversity and inclusion initiatives, right? I would say as well, event teams. So not only a way to kind of connect with the community, but a way to encourage leadership within your organizations, right? Within your teams, to put together these little interest groups, right? And again, to give them that kind of push and that executive authority to, impart change within these organizations, right? And another thing that I've really seen that has worked pretty well for community outreach, for getting involved, for drawing in a variety of backgrounds is paid volunteering days, right? Going out into the community and saying, hey, we're going to go rake lawns or volunteer at a food shelter and that kind of thing, right? And make it paid and say, hey, everyone take off on that day and we're all going to do this as a team, right? So ways to get everyone in that team involved and working together for a common goal. I think that's always a benefit to us all.
Yeah. I think that a huge part of it is understanding the inner work that's required. I think that we can create a lot more psychological safety when we really understand and can be compassionate and empathetic towards others' experiences, understanding our existing biases, being aware when we, exhibit those biases, also being aware of when we make mistakes and just acknowledging that it's going to happen, but being willing to actually lean into that as well. I think that's a huge part of it. And as well as understanding the power dynamics at play, right? The power dynamics that exist within an organization, the historical power dynamics that may exist. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And I really just think that if we commit to being curious about someone else's experience, commit to being curious about the things that exist within our team that may not be as inclusive, right? And not be defensive about that, but just knowing that we're really just trying to take one step at a time, right? The spirit is in progress and not perfection. I really think that's how we begin. I also believe that most of us have some point in our lives in which we have felt like we were othered or didn't belong, and we can maybe tap into that as a point of empathy to understand, maybe not perfectly exactly how to respond, but if I was in a situation where, for me at least, as a person of color, I haven't felt like I've been included, how would I want people to treat me? I'm not saying that that's the answer, but that could at least give you a starting point, and particularly when it's really scary and it's really awkward and it's really hard, and you're probably going to screw up anyway, but it at least allows you to take one step forward.
Yeah, really well said. Thank you for that. Empathy all day long. Love it. I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Allison to jump into the audience Q&A. I see a couple questions in there that the panel and I discussed in our pre-work, but Allison, take it away.
Great. Awesome topics already covered. I feel like we could go off branches of everything that we've covered already. Going to start with the boot campers perspective. And this is something we run into when we're training recruiters as well. And this is something we have to train our hiring managers to talk about is we can't just change the title to junior dev and then still require 5 to 7 years of experience. So when these boot campers are coming into the market and they're seeing these list of requirements, what should they do? Should they still apply? How do we coach hiring managers to walk away from years experience and more into like outcome-based qualification? So what do you have to say for boot campers who are seeing these job boards that might not necessarily say junior or could, and they don't, the lineup, the requirements aren't matching? Any advice there for the boot campers trying to get into these new opportunities?
Yeah,
Scott,
I can go.
please.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the way that I coach my students and just people I've met over the years is ultimately applying is only half the effort, right? Connecting with someone within that organization, striking up a conversation, finding the commonality, finding a way that your background creates a solution within that team, right? And not being afraid to put yourself out there. To directly, ask about some of the qualifications, right? If you feel that 9 out of the 10 skills you're meeting, but you may not meet that 1+ year experience requirement, hey, why not go for it, right? And have a conversation.
I can maybe speak from like the perspective of a person who writes job descriptions and looks at applications. I don't know if this is like an open secret, or I don't want to speak for all job description writers, but I think sometimes there's this assumption that there's like immense intentionality put into a job description sometimes. And in my experience, more often than not, it's by some higher, my manager who's like, hey, you need to deliver this thing. And then they take 5 minutes and they copy an old one. And then they kind of like put in a couple bullet points that seem logical. And then that's what gets shipped. So it's sort of like this weird understanding that like, a lot of times the hiring managers, at least for me, like I don't necessarily always know what I'm looking for. I know like directionally where I'm going, but I'm really always looking for great candidates that can just jump off a page and almost help me learn what it is about this position that I can tap into. So I really, really encourage bootcamp grads and anyone who's applying to a role to sort of just acknowledge like the unique perspective that they bring. Like you are uniquely you, and what you can bring, it can be valuable to an organization. So I hope that me even just revealing this kind of just shows like there's a lot of silliness happening on this side, of the aisle, that you still, shoot your shot in those moments anyway.
I totally agree. I was laughing on mute, but it's also the case that we're so unorganized that we don't even respond to you guys very properly or timely, and you can kind of take it personally like you didn't make it or something. And you have to realize, like, especially with startups and tech, we're moving so fast and we're trying to do so much that your resume and our recruiting system is there, but we may not have gotten a chance to look at it, or we thought we needed something and then things keep changing, and so we're not making moves on people. And so it's like you just have to realize that it's really not about you. There's a lot of other things going on behind the scenes that are almost embarrassing.
I would add to that just briefly, go out of your way to explain why you believe you would be a great addition. Go out of your way to explain why you think you can help hit the ground running. Make sure they have your GitHub. If you're working on side projects, side hustles, let folks know about that, and then follow up. Yeah, and keep them accountable for sure.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, most boot campers are career pivoters, play up your past lives. You are walking in the door having managed campaigns and marketing and budgets and whatever it is, like Dave was saying, express everything, because you're not just a fresh grad, 22-year-old, I just grew up, or I'm trying to. I've done this a few times and I'm literally choosing this now as an adult. And so you can really play that up in that way as well. So that would probably also help you feel a little bit more confident. You're not a clean slate. You actually had 3, 5, 10 years up to this point. So you have a lot of value walking in, more than just technical experience or education. Question now to think about for the folks that are on the development team, like what can individual contributors do to help build a more diverse development team? Things that they can advocate for, things that they can do for the new hires. Any suggestions on how you've seen people that maybe not be a manager, but people that can really help drive that culture internally? Anyone want to? Ingrid, do you have something to think about on there to share?
Evan, you go first.
Okay. I think for me, as a manager, the thing that I really hope for is for the ICs on my team to demand it and to not let me off the hook, right? I think if your leadership really does value this, right, and they're not just saying something, a lot of times the progress that's not being made, there's a lot of factors that can come. It can come from political, it can come from whatever, but a lot of times it's also just, as Ingrid alluded to earlier, like we're just disorganized sometimes. So like it's really, really helpful for me when you just remind me, and I try to create a culture within my teams where it's like, hey, like, like jokingly shame me is like, hey, remember that time you said you cared about this? Like let me know what's going on. It really helps me understand the pulse of how important this is to the team. And then it also kind of like reminds me again of like, this is what I'm committed to, right? I'm not just committed to, achieving an EBITDA target. Like I really need to prioritize this, because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? So to me, just raising awareness of it and just demanding it and holding us accountable, I think that's a great first step.
Yeah, I exactly. That's kind of what I was going to say is like, again, as a manager, I might say, oh, I just need someone with a lot of experience because that's what I think I need. But if you on the team can really help me understand what your team actually needs, I need help with that. I think sometimes people think managers kind of know everything that's going on, and we're humans too. And we really need that help on the team with people that are going to be not afraid to be honest and tell us what's really is the need? Where are things slowing down? What kind of space can we create to make those candidates successful?
Yep, and maybe just to that point, telling your managers that you're, happy to create a mentorship committee, that you're going to take initiative, that you're happy to mentor these folks, and that this is important for the organization, important for you, for your growth, for the rest of the team's growth, et cetera.
Yeah, also even the idea of like a new hire buddy program, like just become a new hire's buddy and show them around. And even if you don't have something formal, like make it your own thing. And you can really make a difference just by being a friendly person. It's hard to be the new person no matter what, but if you can kind of take that torch and guide the new hire even on your own, like that's a great way to contribute as well as an IC. Now, coming off of what sort of was responded here, the idea of knee jerk, we need someone experienced, we need 5 years, we need a CS degree. How do we get our managers, if we're a manager, how do we get the executives, how do we start kind of getting them on board with reevaluating what is required? Because if there's, structures of a set up so that people can't even get the first 1 to 4 years experience, you're not going to have anyone that has 5 years of experience. So what have you seen work in terms of getting executive teams on board with recognizing that hiring boot campers aren't necessarily a detriment, that they're actually a value add? Any suggestions from you folks?
Yeah. So what I've seen, like I said, through more the candidates kind of perspective or the boot campers kind of perspective is, the technical interview process and that need to, formalize or standardize a technical assessment to determine skill set. I've been seeing that more and more, and I've been seeing that as a way to really find a wider array of candidates, but at the same time, make sure that the bar is reasonable and that even your current employees and people who are in your team, can meet that expectation within that technical assessment, right? So, and also being able to lay out what is the expectation of the technical assessment. There's, like I said, there's not as much uniformity in terms of determining, the skill set across the market, and having a clear vision of what you're looking for, what's teachable, what completely rules someone out, and setting that as a baseline, I think will help people better understand. And then on top of that, I want to say feedback, right? That's one of the hardest things, I'm sure, for a hiring manager to set aside the time, but to provide feedback in the interview process, right? And I've seen that as a way to really help not tear down the candidate, but to help them, see the positive in that experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one other thing I would add is like, when you really start to look at what you're trying to interview for, I remember having a discussion with one of my engineering managers when we were realizing women weren't kind of making it through our interview process. And they had said to me, well, are you asking me to lower my standards so women can make it through? And I had to think about it a little bit and realize that, wait, what are we hiring for? Are we hiring for people that can be collaborative and can deliver software? And there's all these other things that are important for people on your team, other than just, can they solve this tricky algorithm? We're not building a machine that delivers cancer drugs to patients that's got to be 100% on all the time, perfect. We're building web apps. So and these are solving business problems. So there's just a shift, I think, as Scott was saying, that's really important to make in terms of like, I know you're trying to test for something, but what are you trying to really hire for? What does the interview really reinforce or take away from that?
And I think my response is I think you can always help management and leadership understand and remind them of what the vision is, and also what the opportunity costs are in service of that mission. I think at the end of the day, leadership just wants to have all of the information that they can to make the best decision possible. And by understanding the opportunity costs by moving towards hiring the quote unquote traditionally most qualified candidate versus the opportunity cost of hiring a boot camp, and as well as the upside for both of them, and seeing if that's in line with their overall mission and vision, that usually is, I think, the easiest way to achieve a lot more clarity, and actually making a really compelling argument for hiring more bootcamp grads.
Love it.
Okay, and I think maybe we could have room for maybe one or two more questions. Is there, in terms of the way that people are kind of thinking through hiring folks, would you say there's a difference between hiring more of like taking on a junior, a new boot camper, or is there a way of working around it if you were to do more of a contract hire position or an internship fellowship type of thing? Is there like, if maybe management's not fully on board yet, is there like a half step that we can get to get there as an organization? Thoughts on that sort of area of hiring?
Yeah, I hope I don't sound like an advertisement here, but I mean, even our Turing Plus program is exactly that, right? And it's been so interesting to talk to the employers in this capacity versus previously when I was talking about them just hiring our graduates. And I think the fact that the risk has been lowered in terms of the cost and the time that the graduates spend, it gives them a chance to try. A lot of these companies that we're talking to have been really curious about hiring these grads, but they just it hasn't been the right time or the right conditions. And it's something about the lowered risk has really helped them kind of take that next step. And then they get to see those positive results and the benefits of hiring the grads. So I think there's a lot of sort of middle steps. I think I would just be really careful and advise, these are adults that need to make money and pay rent. So I wouldn't advise you to take on a boot camp grad just because you can pay them less. I think that's, thinking about your integrity when making these steps is also really important.
We use an internship program at Uplight that kind of runs, I think, similarly to like a co-op that I think works really, really well. So we're able to bring in a lot of bootcamp grads, and on my team, like we have one, and we are able to monitor his learning process and kind of set really clear expectations. We've recently extended his program, and the goal was to get him, that full-time hire and have him continue to grow within the organization. But I do think that it becomes really possible, especially if the conversation at the more senior level is just around like risk. You have a really nice way to kind of manage that risk and create a win for all situation for the company and also for the grads themselves.
Yeah, and I think what Evan mentioned there, risk mitigation is really important when it comes to bringing someone in, making sure that they are, supported, and that they also understand the expectations of, what they're going to contribute from day to day. Right. And I've actually helped negotiate multiple apprenticeships, internships, and things like that. And a lot of them are structured through maybe a third party, like a staffing agency, that may be carrying a lot of that risk. But the expectation is it's more structured as a contract to hire, right? Hey, we want to help people was kind of the message. We want to help someone launch their career. We need to get some work done. But at the same time, we want this to be a win-win kind of situation. So their question was, how would we structure this? And I'll throw this out there. That was Prologis. So one of the sponsors, which is fantastic. But they are, looking to scale some of their programs and that kind of thing internally. So looking very creatively, how can we outreach to a much broader array of talent, right? Not just bootcamp grads or your traditional sources, the CS degree, but yeah, looking at, like I said, those bootcamp grads, and even current students as well, right? And potentially structuring a short-term opportunity, and saying, hey, at the end of that 6 months, if you found another job, that's fantastic. We'll support you in that, but we would love for you to stay, right? And you find that people stay and work hard and grow within that company.
Yeah, the level of loyalty that is created when you have a system that is for everyone and by everyone. That it's so much better than keeping it narrowed and siphoned off. It's different. It's a different overall experience for everybody on the team. And that's the thing they talk about too, is like, same with accessibility. You create something that makes something accessible for someone with a disability. Well, that benefits literally everyone on the team. When you hire someone new with fresh ideas and is new to the whole world of technology, everyone benefits from their enthusiasm, their questions, their ability to mentor. It's really a raising tide lifts all boats scenario. Well, that I think wraps up our time availability for Q&A. Thank you so much for the panelists for your time. I'm going to hand it back over to Dave.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Super grateful. I do want to mention that Allison and a pretty amazing array of folks are doing a panel that is directly related to today's discussion around reducing bias in your interviews. And so you can check that out at 11 a.m. Mountain Time on your schedule. So please do join us for that.
Thursday.
And
it's on Thursday, just so you know.
I'm sorry if I didn't say Thursday, it's on Thursday. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to all the panelists. Thanks to everybody who came and joined us. And if you're viewing us on YouTube, hello, and hello to you in the future. And thanks to everybody at Denver Startup Week. You guys are amazing, and I hope you have a great week.